How are you doing today, Chad?
Doing great. Thanks for inviting me to be a guest here. This is very unexpected, but a very welcome surprise.
Really? I've seen y'all because I saw y'all guys months ago when I followed you guys on Twitter. Because I saw, so there's two of them. There's y'all, the Howling podcast, and then there's one I think it's called Back the Pack.
Yep.
Yeah, and then at first I was like a little confused, like, wait, are they switching their usernames because they're talking about USD? But I was like, no, those are different guys in each of them. But yeah, how did y'all guys start?
Well, we kind of got started. It's a funny story. So Mark went, Jordan Decker and I all became friends over the internet, which is a very interesting story in itself. None of us knew each other in person until we had already kind of established relationships via Twitter. Now it's called X. And we just kind of started, tweeting about sports and whatnot. And Mark always tells the story about how he thought I owned a Taco John's right away. And I obviously don't own a Taco John's. I'm just a brand ambassador. We'll get into that story another time. But and so we all met on the internet. And a few years ago, when I started coming to games, then we just became friends and sat by each other at games and whatnot. And Mark said, we should, I met a lady at a gas station in Yankton and she said we should do a podcast together. And I said, what would we talk about? And I don't know, we can think of something. So in the meantime, a few springs ago, Jordan said, hey, this, Back the Pack thing, they're talking about football, but it would be cool if we did another podcast where maybe we talked about all the sports. And it just turned into a thing where we decided, let's give it a whirl. And we tried it and enjoyed it. And obviously we've been getting better and better as things have gone on, but it's always interesting how it's just fun to try new things. And we've really enjoyed the process the last couple of years here.
Yeah, that's how it's super strange. Cause that's the same thing that kind of happened to me. Someone, it was Carson, he was like, why don't you start like a podcast? And I was like, what would I talk about though? Cause at first I was really getting a few years ago or like a year and a half ago, I was really trying to see like, what's going on in Vermillion and stuff like that. And then when you mentioned that, I was like, well, I could do something. Should I talk about, like, what's going on in Vermillion, like a news thing? But I was like, I don't want to do the news. And then I just started talking to people. Hey, these are interesting people. And I started rolling on it. But man, those first few ones, man, if I look back on them, I'm horrible at talking. I can't get it. Good thing everyone else is great at it. But I think once you start rolling, trying to get the flow going. Cause at first it would be like, okay, let me just talk to like a friend. And then I got someone else. And I was like, oh, let me write it down, get some questions. And then now I'm like, well, cause they say, hey, well, what questions you got? I'm like, I have no idea. Let's just talk. So, but that's how it rolled on me.
It's interesting because, when we first started our first episode, we didn't really have anything scripted out necessarily. We didn't know what we were going to do. And our first episode was absolutely horrible. Looking back at it, it's one of those things where, we didn't do enough preparation, I think, for it. But at the same time, I think we thought that we could just go in there and talk about sports for 45 minutes to an hour, but there's a lot more involved than just talking about sports for 45 minutes to an hour. There's you have to know about the players, about the athletes that you're talking about. You need to know about the coaches. You need to have a lot more knowledge and do a lot of prep work related to the specific athletics than just showing up and chit-chatting with the guys about it. And it was very interesting. After our first episode, we got a little feedback from some professionals who, in the area that we admire greatly. And basically is like, that wasn't very good. It sounded like a bunch of guys just sitting around talking at the bar and they didn't really know a whole lot of what they were talking about. And cool. At that point, we kind of took that feedback and said, well, I think we can do better than that. And so we really kind of dug in and figured out what works, what doesn't work. And that's the nice thing with the podcast format is that you can try new things. And if you don't like it, you can just switch up to something else. And, it's not that big of a deal.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So how long have you guys been doing it?
Our first episode was in August of 2024. So we've been doing it just over a year now. We did the first season of the Howling podcast. We had 33 episodes in there from between August and then May. And we kind of, once the end of the school year rolled around, we kind of ended up stopping because there's not a whole lot. I mean, there is, national track meet and things like that going on, but it's tough to fill up an hour worth of content with, one or two, high level competitors doing one or two specific things. But it was interesting as the year went on, we were able to decide that, hey, this works a lot better if we have a guest come on. And so we had some great guests that were, available and willing to come on to our show in season 1. We ended up with Coach Johansson, Coach Peterson from the basketball program, Coach Carrie Amy, Coach Devin Amy came on from the women's basketball program. We ended up having John Schemmel on at the end of the season. And then a couple athletes as well. We had Grace Larkins and Max Burchell and Morgan Bodie come on. And it was a lot of fun. And we learned a lot about the athletes, some of their stories, the coaches, some of their stories. And it was just really interesting to get to meet those people in a different environment.
How did you guys get those guests? Did you guys just ask and it was just simple?
Well, you'd think it would be that simple, right? And for some people it is. So I don't know if you've ever talked to, a whole lot of the coaches, but technically there's a process with, you're supposed to go through the communications department and the athletic department. So we do contact the sports information people at USD and ask, hey, we would like to have this person on next week. And then they go and talk to the coach and kind of get things set up. But as soon as they say yes, a lot of them we're on pretty decent relationships with. So then I would feel comfortable emailing or talking to someone in a non-structured or non-formal way and just saying, hey, we'd love to have you on the podcast and things like that. One of the interesting ones was the volleyball coach. So we love volleyball. We actually cover volleyball a lot on our program. And Leanne Williamson is great. And we talked to her at the Summit League tournament in March last year. And we said, we would love to kind of told her what we do for our podcast and said, we'd love to have you on, you've got spring volleyball coming up and whatever else. And we just weren't able to make it work out with her. And so over the summer, we just were pretty insistent in saying, we really want Coach Williamson to be on our show. And so when she finally committed, it was kind of a big deal for us because we've been trying so hard since, March to get her on the show.
This episode is brought to you by 5 Star Barbershop. Are y'all guys looking for a place to get a haircut? I recommend 5 Star Barbershop. They're the #1 barbershop in the southeast region of South Dakota. From haircuts, beards, eyebrows, shampoo, you name it. They also offer discounts for students and athletes. I will add their link so you can make an appointment because they get very, very busy. Now let's get back to it.
Okay, that's how. So, okay, now I get it. Because I've been trying to get. So I've gotten some of the coaches. I've had Leanne on. She was great. I had John on. He was cool. I haven't got like the students, but I think now I know I gotta kind of. I've been kind of. Well, I don't know. Have I asked? The only person I had on, and it was in the beginning when I didn't know how the structure worked. I had Grace on, Grace Larkins, but I knew her because she goes to my church and she goes to my community group. So I see her like every Sunday for a few hours. Which funny thing is, this was years ago before I started this. I didn't know who Grace Larkins was at first. So I heard like in our community group thing, I heard something about basketball, but I thought they were talking about someone else. And I knew Grace. I was like, man, she's tall. But I didn't know she played basketball. And then they were saying, oh, she's the best, this and that. I thought they were kind of like joking around. And then later on, I find out a friend of mine, Russ from Core Trust, he gives me some tickets to about one of the basketball games. And then they announced Grace Larkins. And I was like, is that Grace? And I was like, yeah, I know. I think I know her. Or she goes to my community group. And then he was like, oh, man, she's one of the best and this and that and other people. And then she was playing. And I was like, oh, snap. And I was like, apparently, I had like a celebrity sitting next to me these past few months. So that was wild.
Yeah. And she's such a nice and humble person too, that, she's not all about herself. She's not going to come out and say, all those things. But yeah, she's great. And her personality is fantastic. And I think, now she's going to law school. And I think she's just a great asset to the whole community here.
Yeah, it's been wild. It's cool how you get to meet all these interesting people. Like when I had John on, and at first I was thinking about, because when I get someone, I'm like, well, what should I talk about? And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe we should talk about their job, but for some reason it never goes like that. So I had John on, and then I found out he played some minor league. Man, for like 30 minutes, we were just talking about him and the minor league program and this and that, and then other stuff, and something about SDSU. But it was fun. Like, these people, I keep forgetting that, hey, they're, athletes or directors or coaches, but they're also just normal people like me.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's just, trying to get through the same life here. We've all got families, we've all got, kids, everything else. And it's interesting because a lot of times, in athletics especially, people see, coaches or athletes, and they just think, oh, they must do basketball all the time, or they must do, football all the time, or volleyball all the time. But really, I mean, that's just something that they do in addition to all of the other parts of life that they're involved in. And that's the interesting part of athletics, I think.
Yeah. So besides, because we'll dive into like USD sports, you guys, are you also into like professional sports too?
So I'm somewhat a fan of professional sports. I grew up in South Dakota, so I grew up in Harrisburg, not too far north of here, and was big into high school sports, and I still have always been big into South Dakota high school sports. And I actually, I coached high school football for a few years after I graduated from college. And I decided that, once I kind of pivoted career in 2014, I got out of coaching high school and I was looking for other ways to stay involved. And so the past couple of years, I've gotten into broadcasting high school sports through a company it used to be based out of Sioux City called Metro Sports TV. Now it's called Midwest Sports Plus, and it's with the Forum Communications umbrella. But I actually produce and direct high school football games and basketball games for Midwest Sports Plus. And it's very exciting, but, I spend a lot of time during the week, prepping for games, making graphics, things like that. I'm a voter in the poll, in the top 5 poll that they have for high school football right now, and do, lots of time. Like last Friday night, I was out at Howard Wood Field in Sioux Falls covering 2 games I got there at 3:00 in the afternoon, and I didn't leave till after 11:00 at night. So it's almost like a side, full-time job for me, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing the high school thing. And then for college, I actually do, I work with a radio broadcast for the University of Sioux Falls football team as well. And so I do sideline reporting for home games on the radio broadcast for them. So it's, only 5 or 6 Saturdays a season with that, but it's kind of a neat little side gig. And then I host the coaches show every Monday morning. I record that with Coach Jim Glogowski, who's the University of Sioux Falls head coach as well. And then, we post that on our different media platforms and things. So it's just a nice way to stay involved. And since I'm so active with all those local sports between USD, doing the USF coaches show, doing the high school sports, I pay attention to professional sports, but I'm not as, diehard as I, would be if I had more time to devote to those type of things.
Would you ever want to do something like that full-time, like for USD or any big college?
Well, I think that depends. I think right now it's kind of an interesting, hobby, something that I do in my spare time. As far as full-time goes, I do like having the flexibility to, put my family first and things. If I need to spend time with family on a weekend or an evening, if that's your full-time job, you have to be there. If it's something you do on the side, then it's, something that you can, say no to once in a while.
Okay. I guess that does make sense. So are you also the person that, during like, for example, if I'm watching the game, it could be any game. Are you the person that's, doing the commentating, like what's going on with the plays and everything?
Yeah. So that's what I do with the USF broadcast.
Okay.
I'm one of those people. I'm a sideline analyst for them.
Sweet.
So I have a live microphone down on the sideline the entire game. It's a little bit more advanced than, say, if you're watching a big time production on one of the 3-letter networks for NFL, and they say, okay, now let's go down to the sideline reporter. Those are like definitely like cued or the sideline reporter only talks when they're given a cue. My mic during games is live. I talk anytime I can fit in. I'm basically another analyst down on the sideline.
Oh, that's cool.
And I previously have done the color commentary for other high school broadcasts as well. A couple years ago, I was the color analyst for T Area High School, doing their high school football games as well. I enjoy doing that, but being on the production side of things, it gives a little bit different aspect to it. And I enjoy both. It just is right now I'm doing the producing and the directing side of things.
Cool. So how do you do it? Like, how do you get that flow going when you're doing it without making it awkward or pauses? Because you got to keep going, right? You can't just have it like a quiet time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's one of those things where a lot of it is developing a relationship with the people that you work with. And so when I'm doing high school games, like I worked with a great guy, Jerry Paleschi. He actually does the sideline reporting for USD for the football broadcast. He was the play-by-play guy that I worked with for doing high school games. And he's so good that, we kind of had a system that we developed where he would describe the action and then I would break in and do the analysis. And, we didn't step on each other's toes. We were right next to each other, a lot of nonverbal communication there. But it worked out really well. The harder part is when I'm down on the sideline and I'm not able to do the nonverbal communication because I have to really listen for cues and I kind of have to pick my spots when I'm going to speak up because the other guys won't talk over me if I start talking, but I don't want to talk at the same time as someone else. And so that's the biggest challenge with that.
Okay, sweet. Now, did you see I'm guessing you did see the USD game, right? The first one? Or
yeah.
No, the first home game, right?
Yes.
Did it go into overtime?
It did go into overtime, yes.
See, I missed it because, I'm horrible. I'm very horrible at organizing everything. So Saturday I was recording an episode from over there, the Resilient Event Center. And then I was like, why is there a bunch of cars everywhere? Because I got there really early. And I was like, oh, today's the home game. And then same thing, my guest, Rod, was like, hey, the game's playing. I'm like, man, I missed it. And then I was just following just a little bit online. And I think in the beginning they were kind of losing. And then I saw the score and it said when they went to overtime, I'm like, oh man, I missed it. But how was it?
It was a fun game. I think as far as the Yotes performance, there are definitely some things to improve on from the game. I think the passing game offensively is not clicking for the Yotes right now. And I'm not sure what's causing that. I'm sure the coaching staff is really, really digging into that right now, trying to figure out what's going on. But otherwise offensively, the running game was phenomenal. There was an injury situation where the starting running back ended up, hurting his knee and is basically out for the entire season. And so the young man who came in, LJ Phillips, just absolutely ran wild on the Northern Colorado team, ended up with 301 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns on the game. So just had a phenomenal game as far as that goes. And I should have pulled up the stats ahead of time to make sure I had him up here. But he actually was named, I think, National Offensive Player of the Week or something like that based on that performance. So he had a really good game. But unfortunately, the Yotes weren't able to get in the end zone too many other times besides that. And then there were a couple field goals that were missed too. So I don't know if you know Will Leyland, but he's a great guy. And he usually, does really, really well. But since he, he's a kicker and we all have things that we do, that we maybe do well and things that we make mistakes on, and he just had a couple field goals that didn't go in, and usually he gets those ones to go in. But defensively, I thought the Yotes played really well, and were able to, other than the last drive, we were able to do very well against Northern Colorado. Stuffed them a couple times on goal line, things like that. But unfortunately, it just went to overtime. But then in the overtime, the Yotes were able to score on the first possession, and then the defense held them out and won the ball game.
Did you see any difference between, I guess now we have a new coach versus last year?
Yeah, I think the head coach, Coach Johansson was here last year, and I think he's a defensive guy, and the defense played really well. As far as I think the biggest difference that I've noticed so far this season in the first 3 games, and I'm just kind of a passive watcher here, but I think the passing game, like I mentioned, just isn't clicking as well as it was last year. It's not just the difference in coaches. I think there's also a turnover in offensive line. I don't know if Aiden's feeling a little bit different with the protection or how that all works, but then difference in receivers as well. The guys that were here last year, I think 3 of his top receivers are not with the program this year, whether they transferred, graduated, or are injured. And so, just having to develop that continuity and the relationship with those receivers takes a little bit of time.
Okay. How does that work with the transfer stuff? Because I remember watching it with basketball. And I don't know, maybe it's not new. Or is it new? Or how does it work? How does the whole thing work?
Well, basically, so in the old days, I mean, before 5 or 6 years ago, players could really only transfer one time in their college career. And if they did transfer, depending on where they transferred to or from, they usually had to sit out a year. So there was kind of a big penalty attached to transferring. People didn't want to do that a whole lot. But now basically every student athlete is a free agent every single year. And so if you want to think of it that way, in a professional sports type of term, if an athlete has a really great year at the University of South Dakota, they could end up getting essentially recruited by schools in the Big Ten or the SEC or some of those other big schools, and essentially getting paid to go play at those big time programs. Likewise, the Yotes can kind of go out and say, hey, maybe we want to, pick some of these other players that are out there and available. So it's an interesting dynamic. One of the things that I think coaches are starting to figure out, though, is that there's no substitute for player development. You can't just plug in a player in every single position every single year and expect that those players to just instantly gel and form a team. There's a lot more that goes into that than just saying we need a wide receiver, so you go out to the transfer portal, which is not really a physical thing. It's just a big list of everyone that has said, I am looking for another school right now. And so they can go out to the transfer portal and say, oh, who's the top wide receiver or the wide receiver that we think would fit most in this program, and then go offer that student athlete a scholarship and, whatever else. But I think there's more involved in that than that. Really, I'm not an expert on this, but they have to have, scholarships available. There's NIL deals, name, image, and likeness, potential things. Some of the players might be getting an offer from another school where they might have financial compensation as well. And so you have to compete with all those different factors. But it's basically like every kid can be a free agent every single year if they want to. But one of the things that has been found, especially in I think basketball is kind of the biggest one, is typically there's more players that go into the portal than there are spots available every single year.
Oh,
and so really these players are kind of, taking on a tremendous amount of risk by entering that transfer portal. And it doesn't always work out in the best interest of the student athletes.
So once you're in the transfer portal, like for example, if I was playing for USD and I enter the transfer portal and no one picks me, can I still play or with USD, or that's...
Well, typically as soon as you enter the transfer portal, then what would end up happening is the school would take away your scholarship and probably offer that to someone else. They would try to fill that position. Now, schools can accept players back that did leave that program, but it might not necessarily be at the same level per se that they were at beforehand. So there, like I said, there's risk for the student athletes. As soon as they go in that transfer portal, they're taking a big risk and they're kind of betting on themselves. But the school, there's different schools of thought on it. Some of them might say, yes, we really liked you and we, think you made a mistake and we're willing to take you back. Others might just say, no, you said you weren't, this wasn't the place for you, so go find someplace else to go. So it really kind of depends on the school, the program, the coaching staff, everything else.
Okay. Was there any new players that you guys saw that you guys are excited about?
Well, I think, obviously the running back situation, very excited about that. Defensively, I'm still trying to learn who all the guys are. I feel like, some of the guys last year, it was like, okay, McKeese Grace, he was very, very good, but he's in the SEC now. He's playing for a big time school, Kentucky, I think. And so it's trying to figure out who are the defensive linemen, who are the linebackers, who are the safeties, the corners, because some of them are holdovers from last year, which is absolutely great. But, they're still playing with different players and trying to fit in the right situations too. So I think there's something where if you ask me that same question in 2 or 3 weeks, I'd probably have a better grasp on, where everyone is and things. But unfortunately, when I'm watching a game, I might notice 1 or 2 players, but when I go back and watch film or I rewatch a game, maybe that's where I can really focus in on like, okay, now what's the secondary doing on this one? Or what are the offensive linemen doing on this? Because when someone hands the ball off, typically, and you're at a game, you typically watch the guy who has the football. You're not watching what the left guard is doing on that play.
True.
But that's where, going back and doing that film review is a little bit helpful with that.
Oh, okay. And what else do you guys watch? What is your other favorite things? Because I remember, so before coming to South Dakota, I never watched college sports. I thought it was just like high school. Apparently, it's not like that. So I remember going to my first USD game, and the first thing I noticed, like, whoa, they passed the ball. Usually in the high school I went to, they would just run it. And they were passing the ball, and they hit hard, really hard. And then after that, I went to a men's basketball game. And then the women's basketball game, which surprised me. I was like, whoa, they play hard too. And then last year, I think it was the first time I saw volleyball. I've never seen volleyball, like, I guess, just at that level. And that is really, it's fun. That one's really, really cool. So what other sports do you guys like watching?
Well, I love the ones you mentioned. I'm a huge basketball fan, always been a basketball fan ever since I was growing up. I remember watching, back in the 80s, watching Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird on TV, on CBS late at night or whatever. But I love basketball. I love volleyball. Volleyball is kind of an interesting thing. My sister played. My sister was 2 years old, is 2 years older than me. She played in high school. And so I remember going to volleyball matches when I was in high school. But then I went on and played college football. And so I became really focused on football for those years. And then when I got done playing college football, I needed a way to stay active and busy, because otherwise, if you don't find something to do, then you just sit around and don't do anything. Because I feel like football is one of those sports you can't really play recreationally. It's not like I can go pick up 22 guys and be like, hey, let's go over to the park and play, put on some pads and helmets and stuff and play football. So I did play semi-pro for a couple years after college, but I was kind of looking for other things to do. And when I went to graduate school, some of my, office mates were like, hey, let's start a recreation volleyball team. And I was like, sure, sounds fun. Let's do it. And I was probably pretty terrible when I first started playing, but it was something where you just show up every week and after a while you just get a little bit better and a little bit better. And I still do not consider myself good at volleyball. But I was athletic enough that I could, play recreationally. And so then after a few years, one of my friends convinced me to officiate high school basketball and volleyball. And of the two, I much preferred volleyball over basketball, because in basketball, I don't know if you notice during games, but people are very critical of the officials during games. Whereas for volleyball, I felt like when I was officiating that, there were maybe, 4 or 5 people in the entire gym that knew the rules of volleyball at the time. Yeah. And this was 2007, 2008, in South Dakota. And so it was much more enjoyable in the fact I didn't get yelled at by the fans as much. The coaches were a lot nicer, things like that. But I got to know the sport of volleyball pretty well through playing recreationally and then officiating it at the high school level. And my wife and I still play volleyball. I've got two indoor leagues through the Parks and Rec department up in Sioux Falls that I play during the the winter and spring. And then I've got a couple leagues that I play in on sand in the summer at local establishments, and
Cool.
just enjoy going out and staying active and having fun.
Would you ever get like a group of guys and try to see if you could face like USD volleyball team?
I think that would be awesome if we could find some guys that would be willing to do it. I think it would be great. Yeah, we'd have to get the right people, but I think they would absolutely destroy us. They're in so much better shape than any of me or my teammates are.
Yeah. I was always wondering, how come, for example, with USD, or maybe it's just up here, they don't have, for example, they have softball. I need to go to one of those games, but they don't have baseball. Is there like a reason why?
Well, I think I don't know the exact reason, and so I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. John Schemmel would probably have a better understanding of that, but I believe it has something to do with the prong of Title IX that USD adheres to. So Title IX, essentially, there's 3 prongs to it, but one of them is that there's equal opportunities for athletics for both men and women.
Yeah.
And so the way that, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, football is a large roster sport.
Yes.
And football is a male-only sport. And therefore, I believe that since there's such a large number of males on the football team, that you can't really counter that with the volleyball team, because volleyball only has 15 players on the roster, or you can't counter it with one particular other sport, softball, for example. And so I think the way that USD handles this is that if you look at the list of athletics for men, it's much smaller, the number of sports that USD sponsors for men's sports than it is for women's sports. And I think it has to do something with that Title IX.
Okay. Yeah. I heard about that Title IX. I need to dig into that. Yeah, because I thought it was a little strange, because since I'm from the South, with the Dallas-Fort Worth region, so I'm familiar with like TCU, A&M, UT, all that stuff. And even I went to UTA, and usually they'll have like, every sport, and they had baseball. And when I went here, I was like, hey, there's a softball. I was like, but there's not a baseball team. Am I missing something? But probably something.
Well, I'm going to tell you another thing, and this is from my experiences when I was at University of Sioux Falls, but baseball in this region, the way the weather works out, typically there's not a whole lot of opportunities for home contests until late March, April, and May, and then the season's over. Whereas they actually do spend most of the teams around here that have baseball end up spending a lot of their time in January, February, and early March actually traveling further south, which leads to a lot of missed class time, unfortunately, because when those teams aren't able to play at home, the kids, are pulled out of class and they have to go travel to wherever those contests are, Omaha, Kansas City, or even further south. And that just ends up really it's not, detrimental to their education, but it does really hurt some of those programs.
Yeah, I forget about that. Yeah, the weather. I always talk about the weather every year or every episode here in South Dakota. It's rough. Me and my wife were talking about the dome, and I think she was asking me. She says, she asked me in football, if they ever practice or play or outside when it's cold. I'm like, yeah, I remember doing it in middle school. And she said, no, because they have the dome. I'm like, no, because I think SDSU has an open stadium, right? Or do they have a dome?
No, they have an open stadium, but they have a enclosed area for track and whatever else. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but their football stadium is outdoors.
Do you ever go to those games?
The USD, SDSU?
Yeah.
I have. Yeah. I really enjoy the basketball ones. The football games, it's really crowded. I guess. So I'll tell you a side story. And this is, my wife, I really enjoy spending time with her. So on Saturdays when I'm able to spend time with her, we try to spend time together. She comes to some games with me, but she has hearing aids.
Oh,
and she has hearing loss. And because of that, when she comes to games at the Dome, it really does kind of mess with her a little bit because they're so echoey and so loud and things like that. And so she came to the game on Saturday and she was like, that was kind of a lot for me. And when it's SDSU USD and there's a packed environment and everything else, she prefers not to be in that. And honestly, I'm going to tell you this. If you watch from home, sometimes you do get, the concession prices are a lot cheaper and you get a little bit better view sometimes than sitting way up in the, but I'm not saying that, people shouldn't go. I think people should go to those games and support the Yotes. And I try to go to as many as I can. But yeah, sometimes the big time games, I just prefer, based on my wife and our situation, just to watch those ones at home.
Okay. See, I've been to the basketball games against SDSU. I always want to go to a football game, but they're usually or almost all the time sold out.
Right.
And I think it's like every other year is home. Because I guess, every year they switch. So one day I'll go. One day, because it seems or the people I've talked to, they say it's very intense, but very fun. They said back in the day, it was way more like aggressive. I guess something with fights and all that, but now it's a little more calm. It's supposed to be friendly.
Yeah. And I think, back in the old Division II days, I don't know if there was fights necessarily, but, people used to throw objects out on the court in basketball, throw objects out on the field in football. And you knew it was a rivalry game, one of those type of things, but it's always fun. It's interesting at the SDSU USD game for men's basketball last year. I was sitting in section 106, row 2, where I like to sit for a lot of games if I can. And I had 2 SDSU fans sitting next to me because it's not like high school. They don't have an SDSU section over here and a USD fan section over here. Everyone just buys the tickets or gets the tickets. And that's kind of where you sit. And so you end up sitting by people. And it's always fun to banter with fans from the opposing school. I enjoy bantering with fans from the opposing school, but you can't do it in a way that, would lead to a fight or make something personal or whatever. It's just, you have to be, somewhat courteous about it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun. That's what sports are at the end of depending on it, because, sometimes it's a job, but for us, it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun. Hey, also, I do want to congratulate y'all guys because y'all guys are also doing something with the brewery, right?
Yeah. We've got a new title sponsor or main sponsor this year for our podcast. The 19 Brewing Company here in town is our sponsor. And, that's just something that Jordan Decker ended up working out with them. And it's been going great so far. We promote their stuff on our show and, we love going in and visiting 19 Brewer. I don't know, who doesn't enjoy having a beer every now and then, but it's always fun to get to know people in the Vermillion community and especially people that, USD based, they're very community focused. And so having them as a sponsor was kind of a no brainer for us, working out and we're still trying to, we're trying to figure out right now what the sponsorship situation, is going to, because it does help us pay for the equipment, the services, everything that is involved with our podcast. But, we'd like to also have, merchandising and things like that. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I've got one of our shirts on. We've got kind of the Wakanda Peach Company is our parent company, our LLC that kind of backs everything. And that's Mark Wendt set that up a few years ago when he was in Wakanda. And so we've kind of got like a little business structure set up. And so we're trying to really take this to the next level.
Cool. Would you want this to become like a full-time gig?
Well, I don't know if full-time gig is, necessarily the thing, but, we're looking at expanding right now, just the way that people can view our podcast, consume our podcast. And so we've got a couple different options available right now, and we're looking into that. I don't want to announce, break any news right now with who we're potentially partnering with or things like that. But
Joe Rogan?
No. For distribution, but right now, people that are interested, if you want to support the podcast, the best way to do that is to go out to YouTube. We do a live show every Sunday night, 9:00. subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's probably the best way that people can, support the podcast. I know that's always an interesting thing. People of a certain age are always like, how do I find this? Where's the link? I've got a friend every week that I literally have to text the link to podcast to him because he doesn't know how to subscribe to the YouTube channel. But it's one of those things. If people want to support it, subscribing there is fine. We also are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. So following our pages on Facebook and Twitter, liking the posts, things like that, those are always helpful to us. But as far as like, would I want to do this full time? I don't know. I wouldn't want to, filling up a show every day would be difficult, that with content, but doing, I don't know how that would all work if everything worked out. And trust me, our sponsorship is not at an amount where it would support me or my family full time.
Well, yeah, I think you are right. Cause like right now it's fun. Cause it's like like a hobby, but then sometimes when a hobby turns into a job every day, then you got to make sure, am I making this, and you're like, is it fun? Cause then, when you're doing that grind, then you get kind of burnt out a little bit. But yeah, just doing those little, like the stuff like I do it like 2 times, 3 times a week. And I actually enjoy it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I keep saying, what if this was full time? But if I did like every single day, because the thing that troubles me a lot is the editing. Man, that takes a lot of time. The recording's fine, but the production, post.
Right. And that's one of the nice things about us doing a live show is that we don't really have a whole lot of editing. I mean, we're on, people can see us as it's happening. And the nice thing about being on YouTube and using the platform that we use is that people can actually interact with the show as well. So people can comment during the show, and those comments might actually be featured on the show as well. But then we don't have to go back and edit things out later on, no matter how dumb they were, the things that we said or whatever else. We don't go back and edit those things out. And so that's kind of a risk, but basically you just have to say, hey, what I'm saying right now is going to be content that is going to be out there and posted. And I just have to be willing to live with that. And so do Jordan and Mark and whoever our guest is that night.
Yeah. Do you guys ever live stream also on Twitch, or is it just YouTube?
We don't use Twitch. No, we use YouTube, and we're live on Facebook, and we're live on Twitter or X, as it's called now, as well. And then like I said, we're exploring some other options, but yeah, I haven't done a whole lot with Twitch yet. I know that some people, especially in the sports world, are really getting into that, and there's lots of opportunities, but I'm not going to break any news right here.
Yeah, I got it. What if you guys ever did like, same thing, like those analysis, like having the like videos, like how they do on the news, but like have 3D. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some stuff. Would that be also a possibility, or does it also cost kind of money?
Well, yeah, I think that's anything that we add that requires production, like equipment and things like that. That's always the money side of things. And I think right now we're kind of at the point where we really enjoy just talking about USD athletics. And I think we kind of are helping to fill that little area that, hey, we're a fan show. We're not something the athletic department is putting on, but we're talking about USD athletics. We're bringing up ideas. We're bringing up things like that. And for now, I think we're kind of satisfied with what we're doing. We're not looking to expand and do a lot of cool things, but if something came along and became available, that would be something we would probably try.
Cool. So besides doing the podcast thing, what else do you do?
What else do I do? My full-time job?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I teach, I'm an instructor of decision sciences with the Beacom School of Business at USD. I teach both on the main campus here in Vermillion, and then I teach at the Sioux Falls campus, USD Sioux Falls, which is just off of 60th Street North and Interstate 29 there in Sioux Falls. I really enjoy both. They're awesome. Both of the campuses are great. I feel like USD is just a home right now. All the people here are fantastic, and I'm glad to be a part of the USD community.
Cool. Wait, so you go back and forth between Sioux Falls?
I do. I actually live right up by Sioux Falls. I live in a town called T,
Yeah.
which is just south of Sioux Falls, southwest of Sioux Falls.
Oh, okay.
And so I drive to Vermillion and teach on the main campus on Tuesdays and Thursdays, typically during the school year. And then I teach at the Sioux Falls campus, typically on Mondays and Wednesdays during the school year. And then Friday is kind of my prep and grading day. So I spend time I usually am either at my home office or the Sioux Falls, the office in Sioux Falls, because that's a little bit closer mileage wise for me.
Okay. Do you also have any goals with that? Like, are you thinking, oh man, hopefully one day my goal is to become like, USD president or this and that, or just same thing, just hanging loose right now?
No, I really enjoy my job. I think my talent, my gifts, my abilities are geared towards classroom teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so, during COVID, when everything went down, I really wanted to get back to the classroom, and things were kind of, heading towards, well, we can just teach classes on Zoom or whatever it is. And we really found out that, number one, you can't teach a class effectively using different modalities at the same time. So teaching a class in person is different than teaching in a class online.
Yeah.
Those are two completely different things. And learning in class is different than learning online. And so I think what ended up happening was, and luckily universities, including USD, kind of realized this, is if we're going to offer classes in the classroom, then that needs to be that focus. If we're going to offer classes online, that needs to be that focus. But a student can't be in a class part-time and then online part-time and get the same things out of it. And so from my perspective, I prefer teaching in the classroom. That's kind of my preference, and I believe my strength along the way. Part of it involves just developing relationships. I do also teach some courses online, but for the most part, I really enjoy being in the classroom with the students and teaching.
Say it's probably the same thing with like when you watch sports. Do you prefer going in like to the game? Or I know you mentioned because of the concession, but is it a different feeling?
It's different. I prefer to be at the game.
Yeah.
If I can be at the game, I will always be at the game. And actually, I prefer to be, if I can be as close to the action as I can, that's preferred as well. So like when I can be on the sideline for certain games, I much prefer that, even over sitting in like a luxury suite or something like that. I would rather be on the sideline, walking up and down, seeing what's going on with the action. And I'm not a huge sit in the stands kind of guy. So if I have to sit there, I will, but I really enjoy being active and being a participant. Like you're walking around. My 17-year-old son right now does track and field. I love track meets because I can go walk around and stand at different places and see what's going on with the action. I'm not just sitting in one seat for 3 hours. That's what I really enjoy. I don't mind watching sports on TV, and it's a nice release, but at the same time, it's different. Yeah. When you're at a game, it's a completely different experience.
Oh yeah, it is different. One thing I've never been to, and it kind of sucks because I'm from the Dallas area. I've been to the Rangers game, but I've never been to a Dallas Cowboys game, and I don't know if I want to go because something funny. Because people ask me, they're like, "Are you a Cowboys fan?" I'm like, "Yeah." In the beginning of the season, then after that, when we start losing, I switch because every single year, I don't know what it is. And I have family like cousins, they're diehard. Like when they're diehard Cowboy fans, like one time I think one of them cried. I think he was like 28 years old too because they lost. But this is what they say. I swear this is what they say. When we lose, just wait till next year. Just wait till next year. You know how many times I've been hearing that? I've been hearing that for like 15 years. Just wait till next year. So I switched. I'm like, you know what? I'll switch to like the Chiefs or someone that actually wins.
Yeah, that's tough. I actually grew up as a Minnesota Vikings fan. And so that's kind of my team, professional. I do not like eat, sleep, and breathe Minnesota Vikings football though. The one that really got me, I don't know if you knew much about it, but the 1998 season, the Minnesota Vikings had it was the most wins, 15-1. They had the best regular season of all time. And then they ended up losing in the NFC Championship game to the Atlanta Falcons. The guy who, Gary Anderson was the kicker. He had never missed a field goal the entire season, ended up missing one that could have won the game and blah, blah, blah. And at that point I was like, okay, well, that really kind of devastated me. And I was just like, why am I so attached to this team that doesn't, so I will go to a Vikings game like once every couple of years and have a good time. I enjoy going there with my friends. I enjoy, professional football as kind of like a social activity, but I do not sit there on Sunday afternoons and just like focus on every single play like I would if I was watching a Coyote game. Yeah.
But there were twice that it hit me. So with the Texas Rangers, so now they won the World Series when I'm not there for some reason. But I remember it was I think it was like the 2009, 2010, something like that. We made it to the World Series. And it was with the Giants, whoever it was. We were about to win. We only needed one game. And then Nelson Cruz dropped it or something. And then we lost that game. And then we lost every game, and we lost the whole thing. And then we went back to back. So the next year we win again, and then we lost. I'm like, what? And that one broke me. After that, we didn't win. I didn't have no faith in the Rangers. I didn't even watch their stuff until, was it last year or a few years ago? They won the World Series. And when they were playing it, I think because my dad was like, "Are you watching the game?" I'm like, "No, if I could watch it." And then I watch it, and then they lose. And then he was, "Are you watching the game?" I'm like, "No, I'm not watching it." And they won. And then my sister and my dad were like, "Hey, please don't watch the game because I think it's you that's making us lose."
I'm going to say it's not you. So this is always an interesting topic with people that watch sports, right? So we always think of like superstitions, right? And I always tell people I'm not superstitious. I'm not even a little bit stitious. It's one of those things where like, we really don't have, if each individual had anything to contribute to the outcome of the game, like it would make things really, really weird on, a team's going to perform better because this person is watching, or because that person's wearing those socks, or that person's wearing the hat they're wearing a different way. It's just interesting how people perceive things and how they actually work out. But yeah, it's not you.
Okay,
don't worry about it.
It's not me. Do you follow a little bit about, or do you follow boxing or a little bit, or not too much?
Not a whole lot.
So, what was it? Saturday? There was the Canelo fight, and usually Canelo always wins. And then I was just joking with my wife. I don't gamble. I don't do any sports betting because I feel like I might lose. But usually Canelo always wins. And I was telling my wife, I was like, man, maybe I should put in our life savings and bet on him. I was just joking around. And what do you know? He lost. And I'm like, whoa, that's a good thing I didn't bet, because I don't know how this stuff works. Maybe I shouldn't even watch these games. But like you said, it's not me.
It's not you. Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay. So you bring up sports gambling. Like that's a thing where, that to me, if there's ever any of that involved, it really takes the fun out of sports. I think because, sports should be fun. You should be able to watch it, but one team's going to lose and one team's going to win.
Yep.
Every single time, unless it's, one of the sports like soccer where you can tie. But for the most part, you're going to have a winner and you're going to have a loser. And the risk of losing is substantially high, especially with the way the sports betting is set up with point spreads and everything else. And I don't know a whole lot about it. I've actually never wagered on a game, so it's one of those things where I don't even like playing fantasy football because it kind of ruins the experience a little bit. If you end up having a bad day, all you're thinking about is, oh, I wish that guy would have caught 2 more balls, or I wish my team would have, won the game so that I could have, got this money. And it takes the fun out of, or some of the joy out of your team performing and you watching that game.
Yeah. Do you ever do anything like with video games like Madden or anything like that, or no?
I don't. So I played video games when I was in college a little bit. This is like the old PlayStation 1 days. We did play NCAA football back in those days. But, as far as I don't know. I graduated college and my wife and I got married and had kids. And I mean, it was just one of those things where I just never really got back into playing video games, and my kids all play video games, but I feel like it was just something that didn't really interest me very much.
Have you ever went back to it? Like, oh, you know what? Let me see what they're doing, or nothing like that.
No.
Doesn't catch your interest?
No.
So what do you do like, besides, like, you know, after work, you head home? What do you like doing?
Well, I'm a firm believer that once every guy gets to about 35 or 40 years old, you either take up golf or smoking meats. And so I went the smoking meats route. Okay. So I do a lot of barbecue. I do smoke. I've got, this is excessive. I've got 3 smokers at home. I've got a gas grill. I've got 2 charcoal grills. So I spend a lot of time with, you know, when I'm available. Like tonight I'll go home and I'm going to grill some brats, but on the weekend I might say, hey, let's do some beef ribs today. And so I'll go, you know, get some beef ribs, either get them from the store, or I do buy my beef and pork directly from a farmer, and I get it processed at a specific locker in Leota, Minnesota, and they do a great job. And so I'll just be like, hey, I'm going to do this tonight. And I enjoy smoking the meat and I enjoy eating the meat, and it's a fun time for me.
You wouldn't want to switch the smoker for some golf clubs?
I'm not a big golfer. I've played golf, you know, in my 20s and things, but golf is probably the most frustrating sport for people to play because what was it? The Bagger Vance movie where it's like, no matter the best golfer in the world still hasn't mastered the sport. They still have different things. And I just feel like it's a frustrating game. It's an expensive game. You know, I'm not saying smoking meat isn't expensive, but for golf, you know, it's something where, I feel like it's probably not my thing.
I tried golf for the first time over the Labor Day weekend. I was back in Texas and they took my cousins. They're like, hey, you want to go to Topgolf? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I've never like swung besides, you know, putt-putt. I haven't tried like a real golf thing. Besides Wii Sports. I was like, I've done Wii Sports. This thing's hard. I could swing a bat. Also, how hard can it be? So I go on it and I see my cousins, they started getting into it and they came with their stuff and their clothes were like, they spent like $1,000. I didn't spend nothing on that. But you know, I see them hitting it. It looks fun. I'm like, oh snap, you know, everyone's having fun. So I go to it and I hit the ball and it's super awkward. Like I'm like, okay, this is nothing like baseball at all. And then I keep hitting it. And for some reason, I'm facing this way, but the ball keeps going that way. I'm like, why is it going that way? Of course, I can hear my dad. It's like, just hit it straight, man. And I'm like, okay. And then they're giving me some advice. Oh, straighten your arm and this and that. I'm like, okay. And it keeps going that way. Okay. I'm like, you know what? Okay, let me just turn this way, the opposite way. I hit the ball and it goes that way farther. And there's one time where it hits we got like these safety walls and it hits that. I'm like, what is going on? And then I even try to go kind of slow. So I go slow, and for some reason, it goes the other way. And I'm like, and then after that, like all of this hurt. And then I hurt my ankle for some reason. I had like a whole week. It felt like I twisted it. And I'm like, man, what did I do? But yeah, that's a way different sport.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's hard, right? And then, you know, some of my friends that play, they're like, yeah, if I'm going to play, I'm going to do scrambles and I'm just going to be like, if I can get one good shot per hole, then they can use that shot. But it's so difficult. I could never golf competitively. I don't even enjoy playing that much non-competitively it's something where it's just not my thing. And I much prefer smoking meat. So that's my expensive hobby. Like I said, I've got, my smokers are great. I've got a Yoder smoker, which, you know, I won off of an Instagram contest in 2020. That was or 2021. That was an interesting thing. One of my friends who lives up in Watertown, he used to come down this way every year, and we would rent out some campsites at Newton Hills State Park in the summer, and we would put on this thing called Meat Fest. And he used to bring down these really big, expensive, elaborate smokers that he had, and they were made by this Yoder company. And I really enjoyed, because I helped him out with the grilling and the smoking and everything, and I really enjoyed those smokers. So I started following them on social media, so I followed their Instagram account. And one time they said, we're having a giveaway for this thing. And so I entered it, and then I ended up winning, which is great because it was like a $2,500 smoker that I won. I mean, it had to get delivered to my house by FedEx freight in a big semi. But that's a fantastic, top-notch barbecue pit. And I really enjoy, spending my weekends on that and perfecting that craft.
And you wouldn't switch it for some golf clubs?
Not at all. Not.
Sweet. So see, we're at that hour mark. We need to cut it short, but any shout outs or where can people find you at? Everything.
Yeah. So usually the best way that I tell people to find me on Twitter or X as it's called now, but I'm just at Chad Birger. That's BIRGER at Chad Birger on Twitter. And I have a Facebook account, but I'm not very active on there. I have an Instagram account, but usually it's just me posting pictures of my barbecue on there. So I don't recommend, following me on any of those social media, but Twitter is kind of where I, do a lot of my stuff. And then, if it's through the podcast, we do have an account there and a Facebook page. On Twitter, we're at Howl with us 3. Otherwise on Facebook or YouTube, you can just search the Howling podcast and find us there. And I think typically that's the best way to get a hold of us is through Twitter or X. You can go on and comment on the Facebook stuff, but it's something where I really enjoy the interactions on the X. That's my favorite social media platform, if you will. And so that's where I spend most of my time.
Cool. I'll put all those links in the description. But yeah, I think we should be good. But yeah, I do want to thank you a lot, man.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. It was fun.